recent press conference, the Polish government announced new guidelines concerning the legal framework for abortion, particularly focusing on cases up to the 12th week of pregnancy. Although no legal changes have been made, the guidelines presented by Prime Minister Donald Tusk, Minister of Health Izabela Leszczyna, and Justice Minister Adam Bodnar, who also serves as the Prosecutor General, have significant implications. These guidelines, while not officially changing the law, put considerable pressure on prosecutors and doctors, effectively threatening their autonomy and independence. The status of the guidelines. The two sets of guidelines issued by the Prosecutor General and the Minister of Health differ in legal standing, but both are framed to manipulate how abortion laws are interpreted and applied. The guidelines from the Prosecutor General, in particular, have the power to influence how evidence is assessed and decisions are made in legal proceedings concerning abortion cases. These instructions, despite allowing for some level of disagreement from prosecutors, create an ambiguous legal framework that could severely limit their independence. The guidelines issued by the Minister of Health are even more troubling. Without a clear legal basis, they appear to be a form of soft coercion aimed at public hospitals, potentially misleading medical professionals into believing they are legally bound to follow them. This is particularly concerning, given that the minister's authority does not extend to the majority of public hospitals in Poland, which are owned by local governments. Nevertheless, these guidelines are being pushed as binding, putting doctors in a precarious position. The threat to prosecutors' independence. According to Polish law, prosecutors are meant to act independently. However, the new guidelines from the Prosecutor General undermine this principle by exerting undue influence on how abortion cases should be handled. While prosecutors have the theoretical right to challenge orders they disagree with, the lack of a clear process for addressing disputes, particularly when directives come from the highest-ranking official, the Prosecutor General, leaves them vulnerable to pressure. This situation risks compromising their independence, as they may feel compelled to follow these controversial instructions without recourse. Doctors at risk. The guidelines issued by the Minister of Health also create a dangerous precedent for doctors. They suggest that decisions regarding the legality of an abortion can be made solely based on the assessment of a single medical professional, often a psychiatrist, without the need for a second opinion or a medical board's review. This directly contradicts long-established medical practices that emphasize the need for collective decision-making in complex cases like abortion, especially when psychological factors are involved. Furthermore, the guidelines propose that mental health issues can justify abortion up to the 9th month of pregnancy, effectively endorsing late-term abortions based on a psychiatrist's judgment. This drastically expands the scope of legal abortion beyond what is currently allowed by law. Doctors who refuse to perform these procedures, citing moral or legal concerns, may face criminal charges, including up to 5 years in prison for endangering a patient's health. The situation is further aggravated by the government's stance on the conscience clause, which allows doctors to opt out of performing procedures that conflict with their personal beliefs. The new guidelines essentially nullify this clause in cases where a psychiatrist deems an abortion necessary for the mother's mental health. Doctors who refuse to comply with these rulings could face legal consequences, effectively stripping them of their right to conscientious objection. A path toward legal impunity? The combined effect of these guidelines is to encourage illegal abortions while shielding those responsible from prosecution. By framing the decisions as individual judgments made by psychiatrists and enforced by prosecutors, the government is creating a system that bypasses existing legal safeguards. This approach endangers the lives of unborn children and puts enormous pressure on medical professionals and legal authorities to comply with ethically and legally dubious practices. The government's actions represent a significant threat to the rule of law in Poland. By issuing guidelines that overstep legal boundaries, the current administration is effectively encouraging prosecutors and doctors to break the law, all while offering them a false sense of legal immunity. This not only endangers the careers of these professionals, but also risks leading to a broader erosion of legal standards in the country. The pressure on these key professionals, especially those who resist or question the legality of these new practices, is a direct assault on their independence and integrity. Both doctors and prosecutors now face the risk of legal consequences for adhering to their professional ethics, setting a dangerous precedent for the future of medical and legal practice in Poland. Conclusion: the guidelines presented by the government have far-reaching and alarming consequences for prosecutors and doctors in Poland. By subtly encouraging the circumvention of existing abortion laws, the government is putting legal professionals and healthcare workers in a vulnerable position. They are being coerced into participating in actions that could result in serious legal repercussions, all while undermining their professional autonomy and ethical obligations. This blatant overreach threatens the very foundations of justice and healthcare in Poland, with grave implications for the rule of law and human rights. Polish Federation of Pro-Life Movements.